Good afternoon. Welcome to the Nevada Academic Content Standards for World Languages revision presentation. My name is Ryan Smith. I am currently a Spanish teacher at Reed High School in Sparks, Nevada in the Washoe County School District. And I'm also the facilitator for World Languages for Washoe County School District, as well as the Vice President of PLAN, which is the Professional Language Association of Nevada. Our presentation will be divided into three sections today. First section is going to be collaborating and reaching consensus, where we talk about the revision process and what it took to arrive here today. The second part is going to be building on the past and preparing for the future. And this is where we link the Nevada World Language Standards to the NACSWL national standards. The final part of the presentation is going to be how will these standards serve Nevada's students and teachers. There will be three presenters today. Myself, Julie Lozada Ocampo, who's a Spanish teacher in Lyon County and the World Language Nevada Teacher of the Year for 2014. And we also have James Yoder from the Clark County School District, who is currently the coordinator for World Languages. All right, the first part of the presentation is we're going to talk about how we arrived at this revision process. I want to start with a quote that is very important that kind of drove this process. The learner is at the center of all that we do. The world language curriculum is dynamic and must be dynamic to accommodate the increased diversity of learners and the ways that they are learning and able to learn languages. And that's a quote from Donna Clementi and Laura Terrell from NACSWL. All right. One of the things that drove the revision process is the importance of learning world languages. One thing is to create a cultural understanding, to focus on 21st century communication skills, and to consider this global economy. Okay, this is the revision process that we followed for the World Language Revised Standards. We developed a committee of diverse educators around the state of Nevada. We had a committee meeting in January at Harris. We went back and forth editing the revised standards that we created at that meeting. Then a survey went out to the public and for stakeholders to comment on the revised standards. Then we presented to the state superintendent, and today on July 9th, we're presenting it to you, the State Board of Education. This is a makeup of the people that were on the committee. You could see they're from all over the state of Nevada in different roles in education. These are the school districts and counties that are represented in this revision process. And also you can see we had higher education represented and community college. Then let's talk about the stakeholder survey data. This survey went out on March 5th, and it closed on April 4th. The survey information was sent out to people that volunteered to be a stakeholder on March 5th, and it included the copy of the revised standards. It went to school districts. It went to administrators, teachers, community members, parents, business leaders, and language professionals. It went to NACSWL and to universities. The data was collected and analyzed on April 10th, 2014, and we had positive results and one negative result. Teachers across the state were very supportive of these newly revised language standards. All right, and now I'm going to introduce
Hi, I'm Julie
colleague.
Lozada Ocampo. I'm a Spanish teacher at Dayton High School in Lyon County. And I have the honor today to be talking about how our committee built on the past and is moving into the future with our revised standards. I'd like to start today by talking about NACSWL, which is the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages. They're our foundation. And back in 1998, NACSWL created the 11 original standards that our Nevada state standards are based on. These 11 standards were revised to reflect the changes in the 2013 edition of the NACSWL World Readiness Standards for World Languages. Please allow me to point out a few NACSWL tools and organization of language communication and instruction. NACSWL clustered the standards around the 5 C's, which are communication, cultures, connections, comparisons, and communities. These 5 C's are incorporated into all levels of world language instruction. NACSWL recognizes 3 modes of communication which must be taken into consideration during instruction and evaluation. These 3 modes are interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. They're cyclical, interconnected, and embedded in the standards. Cultural studies connect language to practice, products, and perspectives of the language being studied. Without culture standards, language instruction loses meaning and relevance. This is the NACSWL proficiency scale. Language proficiency starts with a novice learner who uses bits and pieces of memorized language to communicate and then moves up the pyramid as the learner acquires increasingly complex language use. Notice the color coding of this pyramid. Blue is novice, green's intermediate, orange is advanced, and so on. Just this January, NACSWL published a document titled the Can-Do Statements. This document describes in detail what the learner can do at each proficiency level. It's a pretty neat tool for teachers and for the students who can refer to the guide for planning, for evaluation, and for inclusion in a portfolio. Now that we have a little bit of background established, let's talk about Nevada's 1998 standards. These standards were benchmarked to grade levels. Kindergarten, grade 3, grade 5, and grade 8 are listed here on page 6. Notice what the tasks were to determine proficiency. Benchmarks were a set of prescribed activities rather than a proficiency level. Modes are not mentioned. The organization of the 5 C's is subtly there. On this page from the 1998 standards, we're looking at the high school level. The tasks are inefficient descriptors of proficiency. Notice that the years of high school study do not include a 3rd year in the descriptor. Please also notice that there's no mention of modes of communication or of the 5 C's. The 5 C's in the culture are buried in the standards. And proficiency level standard like novice, intermediate, or advanced, the levels of proficiency were divided into exceeds standard, meets standard, approaches standard, or below standard. The Standards Revision Committee stated in our rationale that grade level in and of itself does not determine proficiency. Because of the variety of entry points and duration of language study among districts and schools in the state of Nevada, we find grade level to be an inadequate measure of language proficiency. Since there are so many variables inherent in language proficiency development, it's more appropriate to describe the stages of this language proficiency development regardless of grade level. This change from grade level benchmarks to use of proficiency levels is one of our committee's biggest changes. The revised standards reflect our belief that proficiency expectations should be tied to hours of study. As we changed grade level benchmarking to proficiency expectations, our committee added an extensive section to the revised standards. In this section, we defined exit proficiency expectations as tied to hours of study and language proficiency levels. Again, I'd like you to notice that the color coding, which connects these levels to the proficiency pyramid. Novice is blue, intermediate's green, and advanced is orange. And we have short descriptors for each level. This is a page from the revised Nevada standards. The organization of the NACSWL tools is intuitive. We start with a description of the intermediate low abilities in detail. The header's green to make that visual connection to the ACTFL proficiency pyramid. Notice the 5 C's along the edge, along the left edge. The standards are clustered to those 5 C's. Directly to the right of the standard, the committee placed the performance indicators. In the communication cluster, notice the 3 modes of communication: interpersonal communication, interpretive communication, and presentational communication. All learner sublevels are described and color-coded. What were before benchmarks are now called performance indicators, which are based on levels of proficiency and the ACTFL can-do statements. Stakeholders are provided with performance descriptors and a short definition of what each learner can do for each level. As a teacher, I find this detailed information extremely helpful and will begin to use it immediately in my classroom with the administration, with students, and with parents. So the reasoning behind our revision. Targeted proficiency levels need to be tied to the amount of time the learner has spent learning the language, allowing for varied entry points. Stakeholders need greater specificity for performance tasks and evaluation. Stakeholders need definition of progress along the continuum of language learning. And the revised standards are user-friendly, immediately valid, and reflect the most current educational landscape. As I went through the national board process for world language instruction, I obviously knew Nevada's standards and how they tied to ACTFL. But I used the ACTFL standards because they were more efficient definitions of performance and proficiency. I'd like to now introduce James Yoder from the Clark County School District. He's the Foreign Language Coordinator in Clark County. Thank you.